I was told my 20 cents were small change. I turned them into $300,000 in a lawsuit against my son, who was secretly selling my house. Today, he'll see how small change can blow up a scam. It all started when a 20-cent charge appeared on my bank statement. 20 cents for address verification. Any other week, I would have missed it, but I promised myself that after Richard's funeral, I'd clean the kitchen and water the plants. That charge kept popping into my head. Who verifies an address for 20 cents? When Darren brought the soup and a folder he called Post-Funeral Matters, I asked him about it, matter-of-factly. He bowed his head sympathetically. Online spam, Mom. Don't let little things get you down. He patted me on the shoulder, the way people do when they think grief has made them worthless. Just sign where I've marked. This is about probate, so we can keep the house. I glanced at the bookmarks peeking out of the folder. Relinquishment of ownership, listing agreement, power of attorney, temporary. Why would I relinquish ownership of the house to your LLC? I asked. I tried to keep my voice low. Tax efficiency, he said softly. Samantha was talking to someone at work. At the sink, Samantha folded a dish towel into neat squares and didn't turn around. The towel hit the counter like a hammer blow. It's complicated, Mom, she said. We'll figure it out. Just rest. How could my own son have assumed I wouldn't be able to read the words above the line where my name should be? After they left, I made some tea and opened my ledger. That 20-cent invoice was linked to a company I'd never heard of. I called the number. The young man on the line seemed bored until I told him the time. Oh, it's an automated ping from the title platform, he said, part of the seller registration. It confirms the mailing address in the contract seller registration. I thanked him, hung up, and opened Richard's mailbox, the one which he called the card. The key to the safe was under a grocery receipt on which I had handwritten, "Call Finch, trust agreement, executed, do not sign anything." He made me write it. The day after the oncologist said weeks, he knew I would forget passwords, not principles. That evening, I pulled the box out of the bank, sorted our documents by trust, and found the page we had signed 2 months earlier, the one that prohibited, any sale without my independent counsel. Now, if they sold without my supervision, they were already in violation. This small accusation wasn't just empty words, it was just breadcrumbs. In the morning, I called Attorney Finch. I called the bank manager, who still remembered my maiden name. Then I called the appraiser, the locksmith, and the one neighbor who never gossips and always writes everything down. When Darren returned with a pen and a patient smile, coffee and a notary were waiting for me. "Before we begin," I said, handing him a printed bank statement with a yellow circle around the 20 cents. "Explain this." He laughed. "Mom, you're grieving. Don't dwell on the small details." I slid my copy of the trust amendment across the table, bearing the notary's unblinking gold seal. "The small details sank the Titanic," I said. "Today we'll test how deeply your story will sink in." He stopped smiling. I watched his eyes, not his mouth. That's where truth flinches first. I didn't raise my voice, I just turned the ledger so he could see the neat columns that have guarded this home longer than his LLC has existed. He thought I would be too tired to fight. He forgot tired isn't the same as finished. I did 3 things before noon. First, I called the county recorder and filed a simple form Attorney Finch had emailed, a homeowner's affidavit disputing any unauthorized transfer. It was dull as oatmeal and twice as sticky once it's set. Second, I had the locks changed while Darren was still parking the car. Third, I taped a note inside the front door above the deadbolt where he would see it if he tried to let himself in with copies. No entry without my written consent. Police will be called. He knocked and then rattled the knob. "Mom?" I opened the door wide but kept the chain. "No more surprises," I said. My voice was steady. I could hear Richard in my ear. "Slow your breath through your nose, watch his shoulders. Anything you want to discuss, we discuss with Finch present. You don't need a lawyer to sign probate paperwork. I don't need a son who lies." His face moved, a microspasm of insult, and settled into hurt. "He does that well?" I'm trying to help you. Help me by leaving the folder. He set it on the doormat like a package no one wanted to claim and walked to his car, phone already to his ear. I stood there until he drove away. Then I picked up the folder with a napkin, as if it might be contagious, and slid it into a shopping bag for Finch. Finch called back before I had finished relabeling the pantry jars. He doesn't waste adjectives. You did right, he said. Don't sign. I'll reach the title platform and freeze any file with your parcel number. If they've opened escrow, we want notice in writing. What about the 20 cents? Find the linked email if you can. They often send a verification ping. Forward everything I print, I said. And he laughed once. Short. Like a car starting. Samantha came by late afternoon with tulips and a face like a closed book. She sat, hands wrapped around a mug she didn't drink from. Darren says you're being difficult. Difficult kept our house through the 81 layoffs, I said. Difficult keeps the roof from leaking, she swallowed. He thinks you're not thinking clearly. He's worried you'll get scammed. I caught a scam for 20 cents, I said. How much did he miss? Her gaze slid to the window. The robins were back, rinsing their feathers in the shallow bowl Richard had epoxied. It's not like that. Then what is it like? She set the cup down so gently it made no sound. He took a bridge loan for his business, she said, short term. Using expectations. What expectations? That he could list the house just to get the valuation, to show potential collateral? She didn't look at me. He thought Dad would understand. Your father understood colanders and contracts, I said. One drains water, the other holds it. Which one is your brother using for sense? I didn't tell her I knew about the bridge loan. The neighbor who writes things down had already left a note. Saw Darren on the porch with a stranger last week. Stranger wearing realtor badge. Took photos through the windows, date time. My neighbor doesn't use exclamation points. I appreciate that in a person. Samantha broke then, the way a cheap zipper gives at the hip. He said it was temporary. He said he'd unwind it after the memorial. He said you'd be relieved to have us handle things. And what did you say? I said you wouldn't sign, she whispered. I said you read everything twice. There it was, the small mercy. She still remembered me. I could have used that moment to pull her in. I didn't. I needed her to choose on her own. People who are dragged into truth tend to drag their feet back into lies when it gets cold. Leave the tulips, I said. Call me when you can talk without Darren. She stood. He'll be furious. He's already furious. Now he gets to be informed too. That night I slept with the folder under the bed and my phone on the nightstand, volume up. Old habits don't leave, they crouch. Richard used to say that about trouble. He was right. At 9 the next morning, Finch called with a list. Escrow is open, he said. Your parcel number matches a sale contract at a brokerage 2 neighborhoods over. Seller of record, your trust, which they assume Darren can bind as your agent. They used an outdated power of attorney from the hospital packet you never executed. We'll file a cease and desist with the brokerage and title. Also, I want you to walk your house with a video camera, date stamped, showing possession and condition. Save the footage offline. Offline, I repeated, writing the word large in my notebook. And one more thing, he said. Expect a wellness check. A wellness check? When families want to move quickly, someone calls for a police wellness check to start a paper trail of concern. You'll be polite. You'll show them the kitchen calendar, your pill box, your trust papers. You will not let them in without a warrant. You will ask for badge numbers. You will write them down. I thought of the boy at the title platform, the way he had said, seller onboarding. Will they come today? If Darren felt the door close yesterday, Finch said, he'll open another. He came in the form of 2 officers on my porch at noon, hands folded, faces composed in the neutral look people wear when they know they are about to be lied to from at least one direction. Ma'am, the taller one said, we got a call from a family member. Says you've been confused. Not returning calls. I was asleep, I said, and held up my phone. Do you want to see the call log? Or the video of me making a pot roast at 10 a.m. and labeling the leftovers? I smiled just enough to make it a choice rather than a dare. I prefer to speak on the porch. They looked at each other, the small glance that covers 100 hours of training. That's fine, the shorter one said. Do you have someone to call if you need help? I have an attorney, I said, and a neighbor who writes everything down. They were satisfied in the way professionals are satisfied when they can complete the form and move on. They gave me a leaflet about senior services and left. I wrote down the time, their names, and the weather, not because it mattered, but because it might. At 3 o'clock, a FedEx envelope arrived with a listing agreement already signed, in a beautiful imitation of my handwriting. I stared so long my eyes ached. Whoever had traced my crawl of letters had thought about how a widow writes her surname the first week she's alone. The forger understood grief enough to mimic it. The stroke of the R was heavier than my hand has ever been. My hands did not shake when I carried the envelope to the scanner. I did not cry until I saw at the bottom of the email string enclosed my son's line, "Can we move the close-up? Seller is motivated. Seller motivated." The words were laminate, thin and shiny, like the surface of a photograph that sticks to your thumbs. I forwarded everything to Finch with one sentence. The pen they borrowed wasn't mine. He called in under a minute. "I'll handle criminal referral," he said. "You handle the house." "Do not open the door for anyone." "I won't," I said, "but I will open the blinds." I walked through each room with my phone held steady, bedroom drawers closed, jewelry box untouched, safe behind the winter coats. I narrated like a docent in a museum whose pieces look ordinary until you know who loved them, who polished them with a thumb when the mind rattled like a loose screen door. In the hall closet, the map drawer of the little desk yielded what I had forgotten. The ledger Richard kept of every repair done to this house since 1975. Names of contractors, model numbers, dates, receipts stapled neatly, yellowed but legible. It was a second affidavit, the kind that doesn't need a notary because it wears 30 years of graphite trust. I had my second pot of coffee brewing when the brokerage left a message. It was bright and chirpy. "Hi there, just confirming the photographer for 10 a.m. Saturday. We'll put a lockbox on the door and keep disruption minimal." She used my first name as if we had gone to school together. I called back. "We'll need to reschedule," I said, "indefinitely." "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that." The buyer is excited. "That's nice," I said. I'll be here with excitement of my own." "May I ask what changed?" "Ownership," I said, and hung up. At 5, Samantha texted, "He's spiraling. Please call me." I didn't. I sent Finch a new instruction instead. "If he calls, set a meeting in your office for Monday. Tell him you'll walk me through options. Let him believe I'm considering a sale. Sit him across from me with a recorder and a pitcher of water. Let's see which one he reaches for." Finch wrote back one word, "Monday." I slept like a stone. The second opening to this story came 3 days later at 6:12 a.m. when I woke to the sound of a key in my back door and footsteps that paused when the entry alarm chirped. The code that followed was my birthday, wrong by 2 numbers. The beeping went solid. The footsteps retreated. I stepped into the hallway with the heavy flashlight Richard had kept by our bed. I didn't switch it on. I listened to the quiet where a son had expected a sleeping mother. The alarm company called. I confirmed my password and declined dispatch. Then I called the locksmith again and asked him to repin every lock, including the one on the gate. He arrived by 8. By 9, I had a new routine. I carried the keys in my pocket, not my purse, and I fed the robins on the low wall so I could see the shadows moving on my porch. At the Monday meeting, Darren arrived 5 minutes late, polished and contrite, a folder in his hand, and a tone rehearsed to sound spontaneous. Finch's office is a square room with a window that looks onto the courthouse trees. The chairs are intentionally uncomfortable. They keep people from settling into lies. "Mom," Darren said, sitting. "I'm sorry. I should have communicated better. Everything was moving so fast. Speed is a choice," I said. Finch pressed a button, and the small red light on the recorder glowed. "I never meant to hurt you." What did you mean to do? Finch asked. He pours questions like tea, steady, gentle burn if you hold it too long. Just stage things for valuation, to keep options open, the market. Stop, Finch said. Answer the question asked. Darren's jaw tightened. I wanted to list the house for a few days to show a lender that we had assets we could leverage short-term while I closed a deal. It's not like I was going to sell it out from under her. The title platform ping says otherwise, Finch said. The escrow file says otherwise? The fraudulent signature says otherwise. Darren's eyes flicked to me, then away. I didn't forge anything. Someone did, Finch said. From your email chain? Using your agent, it was the agent, Darren said quickly, then flinched at his own speed. Finch didn't look triumphant. He looked tired, which is worse. You will provide the agent's name, he said. You will provide the bridge loan agreement. You will provide the spreadsheet showing your expected cash flow and why you thought diverting your mother's house into the path of your debt train was good logistics. Darren rubbed his forehead. Mom, can we please? You will not say my name like a wrench, I said. You used it on a line you were not authorized to sign. That is fraud. It is also a confession of what you think I am. I think you're overwhelmed. And you decided to make me smaller rather than stronger. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I made a mistake. You made several, I said. Counting me was the biggest. He stared then, the way a boy stares at a teacher when he recognizes the test is not the one he studied for. Finch pushed a sheet of paper across the table. Here are the immediate terms to consider. You cease any attempt to act as agent for your mother or the trust. You instruct the brokerage and title to close the file. You turn over copies of all communications. You return any keys in your possession. In exchange, we will hold civil action for 10 days pending full cooperation. And if I don't, we file today, Finch said. We add a restraining order. We move to freeze any accounts tied to misrepresentation. We refer to the district attorney. Darren's mouth pulled to the side, a half smile, his tell when he thinks he's found an angle. You won't press criminal, it's family. I will press truth, I said. Whatever room it takes us into. He signed the cease and desist because he believed, somewhere under his cologne, that he could outmaneuver a mother with lists. He sent the emails because he believed he could explain them later. He handed Finch the keys because he believed he had more made. He didn't, but he believed it. Finch filed the civil complaint on day 11 at 9:03 a.m. Darren must have thought the countdown was bluff. He was served at his office at 10:15. By 10:27, my phone lit with Samantha's name. He says you're ruining him, she said. He ruined himself, I said. I am cleaning. She was crying, not the loud cry of someone who wants a witness, the quiet, dehydrated kind that sounds like a person swallowing glass. He told me to call the pharmacy last week to ask about switching your prescription. He said the new one would be cheaper. What did the pharmacist say? We don't switch brands without the patient. She asked why, and I couldn't explain it without hearing myself. The words settled between us like ash. Thank you for telling me, I said. I should have told you sooner. You told me now? She sucked in a breath. He's not going to stop? I know, I said. So we'll make him. The second hook tightened there. Mid-week, with a phone call nobody wanted, I could feel the story tilting. It didn't tilt toward drama, it tilted toward math. Calls, dates, signatures, the small gears that turn big doors. Finch moved quickly. He added to the complaint a count that sounded like a cold wind, attempted financial exploitation of an elder. I dislike that word. Elder. It sounds like a statue in a church rather than a woman who remembers where every extension cord in her house is coiled. But it is the word the law uses, so I let it stand and sharpened it. The brokerage folded early. Their lawyer called Finch with apologies and phrases like rogue agent and internal review. The title company was slower. Their counsel wanted to know how much harm had been done. Finch kept his voice professional, but I could hear the flint in it. You opened escrow without confirming authority and accepted a signature that looks like it was traced over a lightbox thing, he said. The harm is not theoretical. What are you seeking? The title counsel asked. First, full closure of the file with written acknowledgement of error, Finch said. Second, a settlement for the costs my client has incurred and will incur to secure her home, remedy the reputational harm, and pursue civil redress against the instigator. Numbers? Begin with 300,000, Finch said. We can itemize. I held the phone away from my ear, then to breathe. I did not cry. I counted robins on the wall the way they hop sideways before moving forward. 300,000 was not a lottery ticket. It was insulation. It was a net I could string between now and the next storm, a net I could cut down into ropes and lay across a threshold. Title said they would get back to us. They wanted documentation. Finch had a crate's worth. Darren hired a lawyer who liked adjectives. The first letter we received called the complaint vindictive, hysterical, and baseless. I circled each word in my copy and wrote, in the margin, projection. I do not enjoy that style of man. He speaks like a chandelier, bright, showy, always one bulb flickering. We didn't respond to the letter. We moved our case like a camera on a dolly, smooth, precise, straight through the open door Darren's admissions had made. Samantha, to my surprise, asked to meet Finch. She came alone, with a folder of her own. Inside were screenshots of texts, Darren to her, Darren to the agent, Darren to a lender whose signature block contained a Bible verse I recognized from funerals. He had sent her an image of the forged signature and wrote, "Nailed it." Samantha slid the folder to Finch and looked at me. "I'm sorry. Are you finished helping him?" I asked. "Yes." "Then I accept." We didn't hug, we didn't perform. We signed, each in our way, something steadier. She sat through Finch's questions without flinching. She handed over her phone. She asked what test she had failed that made her think quiet was neutral. Finch didn't answer. It wasn't his job. She looked at me then. "You thought I was strong," she said. "I thought you were afraid," I said. "I forgot. Both things can be true." The agent Darren had used was fired. The brokerage put her on a call with their compliance director and Finch. I didn't listen to the whole hour. I heard enough. She tried the rookie defense. Everyone does it. It's fast. The seller was family. And Finch dismantled it with one sentence. The law doesn't care how common the shortcut is. It cares whether you cut through the property line. The agent cried. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt old, which is not the same thing as weak. Old as a pair of hands that have held too much to clap. Darren switched strategies. He came to my porch on a Saturday with flowers and a story about redemption. He brought his son, my grandson, who is 11 and plays the trumpet. "Grandma," the boy said, "Dad says everyone makes mistakes and you taught us forgiveness." "Forgiveness is a gate," I said, kneeling so we were eye level. "To go through it, you have to set down stolen things." Darren's eyes hardened. "You're poisoning them against me." "You brought him to a skirmish," I said. "That's you poisoning." He took a step forward. The boy shifted, a shy pivot. I stood and blocked the way with my body, which is still good enough to climb the step stool and prune the wisteria. "Do not cross this threshold without permission," I said. "Or what?" he said softly, because he has learned that soft can carry. I pulled my phone from my pocket and pressed play on the audio from Finch's office, Darren's voice clear as the bell in the church I no longer attend, admitting the plan. The blood left his face in a clean slide. "You recorded me?" "Finch recorded a meeting in his office where you discussed a proposed course of action that included me," I said. "Call your chandelier, ask him if that's illegal." Darren's mouth went flat. "We can fix this," he said. "We can settle. We're family." "We are related," I said. "Family is a verb." He left the flowers on the step. I didn't pick them up. They wilted fast in the heat. I left them there until they became a lesson, and then I put them in the compost. Title, called back midweek. "We can offer 200, their counsel said. "We understand the gravity. We've terminated our relationship with the contractor who failed your file, 300, Finch said. "That's rich for a file that closed before—" Finch didn't let him finish. "This isn't about a file, man," he said. "It's about your system creating the illusion of legitimacy for a fraud that weaponized a family. My client housed a police wellness check, a fraudulent signature, and a breached trust in the same week she buried her husband. 300. They settled at 275 with an apology letter that used the word failure twice. Finch looked at me over the top of the letter. I can press, he said. Or we can take this and aim the rest at Darren. Take it, I said. I want the rope. I don't need their flag. We signed the settlement, the wire arrived. The number on my screen looked like a foreign country until I wrote it down in my ledger. Then it looked like groceries and gutters and an HVAC unit that won't die on the coldest night of the year. Darren's lawyer filed a response to our complaint full of words that tried to turn hunger into hunger pangs. Temporary, good faith, miscommunication. Finch filed a motion that replaced adjectives with exhibits. It is remarkable how bright the truth looks under dull light. The judge set a mediation. I told Finch I'd go not because I believed in harmony, but because I believed in chairs. Sitting across from a problem makes it easier to measure. The mediator was a former judge with a face like the side of a mountain, weathered, patient, a long memory of storms. Darren arrived with his chandelier and a vest that made him look collegiate. He did not meet my eyes. Samantha came and sat behind me with a pen and a legal pad, and the steady tapping of a heel that said she was holding a wall up inside herself, and if she stopped tapping, it might fall. We broke into rooms and traded offers like chess players who have read the same book. Darren wanted dismissal with mutual non-disparagement. He wanted to pay nothing. He wanted to keep the keys he had copied. Finch wrote our terms on a yellow pad and slid them across the table in the main room when we reconvened. Return of all keys, digital and physical, he paused. Full admission of wrongdoing in a written statement. Pause. Payment of $300,000 to the trust. He looked at me. I nodded. He continued. Agreement to cease any contact outside of prearranged meetings. Order protecting our client from any attempted involuntary placement or financial changes without her written consent. Darren's lawyer snorted. Extortion by another name. The mediator did not look amused. Counsel, he said quietly. Darren swallowed. $300,000? That's insane. The title company already paid $275, Finch said mildly. You are the reason they paid. Darren looked at me then, really looked, like a man who wanders into a room and finally sees the furniture he has been bumping into for years. You would bankrupt me. You did not go bankrupt when you tried to take my house, I said. You were willing to bankrupt me. You just assumed I would keep the lights off while you did it. He stood, then sat, the way a child moves when he has to pee but wants to convince you he is in control. What do you want from me? Truth, I said, and distance. We broke again. We ate crackers. Samantha's heels stopped tapping. Late afternoon, the mediator returned with a face that had shifted half an inch toward spring. He'll do it, he said. 300 from him over 12 months. Keys returned today. Written statement by Friday. No contact order in place for 18 months, I signed. My hand did not shake. The mediator watched the tip of the pen touch paper and nodded as if an incision had been made clean. Darren slid an envelope across the table after we all reassembled. Keys, he said, not meeting my eyes. Garage gate, back door. I took the envelope, shook the keys into my palm, and felt the weight of metal like a church bell in my pocket. He tried to say something then. The chandelier put a hand on his arm. He closed his mouth. We didn't hug in the parking lot. We didn't speak. Samantha stood with me in the shade of a jacaranda and watched the purple petals fall onto the hood of my car. Do you want to get dinner? She asked. Do you? I asked back. She nodded. I need to tell you what I knew and when. I need to hear you say what you will and won't forgive. I need to be your daughter again, without needing you to fix the parts I broke. That is many needs, I said. We'll start with soup. We ate at the place Richard liked because they didn't add sugar to their tomato bisque. Samantha cried once, quietly, when I told her about the forged signature. I cried once, quietly, when she told me Darren had asked her to tour an assisted living facility for when Mom finally stops fighting the current. We did not create a new family at that table. We signed the outline of one with our napkins. The week after mediation, a white van stopped in front of my house, and a man in a polo stepped out with a clipboard. He walked up the path and looked at the eaves, the downspouts, the lawn. He was careful not to step on the marigolds. I opened the door before he knocked. "Can I help you?" I asked. "Here to install the lockbox," he said cheerfully. "Brokerage order." "No, you're not," I said. He looked down at the paper. "Address matches." "So does yesterday," I said. "You've got an old work order." He scratched his head. "Happens," he said, and left. I called Finch, who called the brokerage, who apologized. Again. The apology didn't move me. The van did. A machine that keeps rolling tries to roll over habit as well as people. You have to put a rock in front of its wheel. Richard used to place pieces of river stone along the lavender bed. He said they were memories that didn't go anywhere when his mind did. I picked one up now from the center of the line where the ants rope walk between their hole and the nectar. It was heavy, speckled, warm. I set it at the edge of the path where delivery men stand with cameras on their chests and boxes in their hands. I imagined Darren's feet there, turning away. He paid the first installment. It arrived on time, the amount exact, the memo line blank. The second came late. The third did not come. Finch's assistant, who has the voice of a woman who never misses a dentist appointment, called the chandelier. The chandelier said words like liquidity event and temporary delay. Finch filed a notice with the court. The judge's clerk scheduled a hearing. Darren called Samantha. "She's bleeding me," he said. "You bled her first," she said. He called me. The no-contact order made his call a violation. I let it ring twice so the log would show and then let it go to voicemail. He didn't leave a message. He texted a hurricane of words that stopped at the cliff of my phone's block function. I watched the screen blink and then fall still. That stillness felt like a new room in the house. The hearing was short. The judge had eyebrows like raven wings and a calendar that didn't tolerate repetition. Darren sat at the table with his chandelier and a new vest. Finch argued gently, the way you tell the truth to a tired person. The judge extended the no-contact order, warned Darren, and set a new deadline with teeth. He paid. He paid the rest on time. Each month, like a metronome reluctantly obeyed, the final payment cleared on a Tuesday, under a sky so blue it looked made. Finch sent me a note. All funds received. Case closed pending receipt of the written admission for the file. Darren delivered the statement 2 days later. It was a page long, typed, the sentences short. He admitted to initiating a listing process without proper authority, to using a draft hospital power of attorney without execution, to pursuing title and escrow without valid consent. He used the words, "I am sorry." He did not use the word love. I placed the letter in the safe with the ledger and the river stones I keep for the days the ants choose a new line. Then I went outside to cut the lavender back 1/2 inch because it was pushing at the path. Plants don't know about property lines. They need reminding. A week after the last payment, a check arrived from the title company representing an additional $25,000. An internal audit led to a further settlement allocation, the letter said. I smiled. Small, contained. The pilot light again. I deposited the check and wrote a new line in my ledger. 20 cents, 300,000, add 25. Then I wrote a second line, keys returned, locks changed. Daughter came to dinner twice this month. Son, no contact, neighbors talk. They do it softly when you are old, but the sound carries. The woman across the street, the one who has always nodded at my azaleas, came over with banana bread and the sentence, people mean as comfort. Family is complicated. I poured her coffee and said, complicated is a pile of string. Fraud is a knife. She nodded and told me about her nephew who borrowed a car and returned it without the wheels. I don't feel triumphant every day. Some days I sit on the low wall with the robins and feel like a room with a chair in it and no one coming. Some days I burn the garlic. Some days I send Samantha a photo of a recipe card in Richard's hand just because the slant of the ink keeps me upright. Justice is not a parade. It is a door that locks and unlocks as it should. I ordered new gutters. I hired a boy from down the street to haul the bags of pruned branches. I put the settlement money where it could sit without growing temptations. Municipal bonds, the safe ones that tick up the way a kitchen clock does. I wrote a note and tucked it into the map drawer. If I forget, call Finch. If I forget Finch, knock on the neighbor's door and ask her to read you what you wrote. I didn't tell anyone the last part of my revenge. It isn't a secret, it's just private. I drove to the bank on a Wednesday and asked to see the contents of the safe deposit box. The manager nodded, that banker's nod that says I have known you since you wore your hair in a beehive. In the private room, I placed the ledger next to Richard's Marine Corps photograph and the coin he carried for 40 years, worn smooth at the edges, Liberty ghosted thin by his thumb. I put a new coin next to it, a bright, silly 20-cent piece from a commemorative set my mother once gave me, and I never knew what to do with. It looked cheap next to the old one, but it felt right. I left it there, a reminder. Small change can do large work if you feed it attention and keep it away from men who think women stop counting after funerals. Darren sent a card at Christmas. The order didn't block mail. The front had a landscape and a verse. And inside, he wrote, "Hope you're well." I did not reply. Samantha came by Christmas Eve with her son and the trumpet case. The boy played Silent Night on my porch and the neighbors opened their doors. The notes trembled and then found themselves, the way sound learns its own room. After the last note, Samantha reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "From me," she said, not quite looking at me. Inside was a photocopy of a form she had filed, a change of beneficiary on a retirement account, naming herself and her brother's children in equal shares, and me as the custodian while they were minors. "I wanted you to see where my money goes," she said. "Transparency, right?" "Right," I said. We stood there not touching, and everything in me reached and stayed, the way a tree reaches for light even when its roots know storms. When the county sent the annual property tax bill, I paid it the day it arrived. I wrote the amount in the ledger. I made a note of the date. I added, because I couldn't help myself, a small smiley face in the margin. Then I crossed it out. Old habits. I don't need drawings for victories. I need doors that shut and open and a son who understands that mother is not a word you can sign for. On the first warm day of spring, I hosted the women from the neighborhood for coffee. We didn't make a circle and share. We didn't tell each other how to forgive. We traded names of locksmiths and good lawyers and the number to call at the bank if you want to set a note on your account that triggers a human check when an unusual charge appears. I wrote the number on a card and tucked it inside the cookbook under the recipe for lemon bars. Resistance is a pantry item. You should not have to run to the store every time. After they left, I sat at the table with the afternoon sun, climbing the wall in a square that moved exactly the way it has moved since we bought this house, and I took out the 20-cent receipt and taped it to the inside cover of the ledger. The glue dried clear. The paper lay flat. It looked like nothing. It was everything. That night, I dreamed of a house with doors that opened only for the right hands. In the dream, I held up my palm and the lock clicked. Behind me, someone rattled a handle and I did not jump. When I woke, the alarm light on the panel glowed a small, steady green. I poured coffee. I fed the robins. I stood on my own porch beside the river stone and watched the street wake up. My son lives 3 miles away. Our city is small enough that I see his car sometimes at the light by the post office. He looks straight ahead. I turn left. We occupy the same map in different colors now. That is not tragedy. It is a legend at the bottom of the page. You asked how I turned 20 cents into 300,000 and a lawsuit. I turned it the way my mother turned flour into bread when there was very little to add. Slowly, with both hands, reading the bowl, more than the recipe, letting the yeast do its quiet work, not opening the oven early to peak. If there is a moral, I don't own it, but I do have a rule. If anyone tells you a charge is too small to notice, put on your glasses. If anyone sets a pen in front of you and says, "Just initial," take your time. If anyone says we're family while asking you to erase yourself, set down the pen and pick up the phone. The house is quiet now. The robins have gone for the night, the ledger is closed, the locks are oiled, there is soup in the freezer, and a neighbor who writes everything down, and a daughter who learned to speak before the damage calcified. There is a son who learned that small change can ruin a scheme. There is a woman who watches her accounts like a hawk because hawks know when to sit very still and when to strike. I am that woman. I am not confused. I am not moving to a shelf. I count every line. I keep every key. And when I hear a 20-cent ping in the noise, I go looking because that's where the door begins to open.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.